there's a limited amount of things that the Democrats can do because they don't have they don't have a majority in any of the chambers. However, they can be critical, they can be energetic, they can be like we've seen some Democrats even on social media or in hearings stand out, whether it's Chris Murphy or Bernie Sanders for a long time, or AOC or Elizabeth Warren, or I think it's Congresswoman Stansbury, I believe, or Jasmine Crockett. We see these. We want more of that, and part of that is this old the old group that exists. Whether it's somebody like Chuck Schumer. I mean, there's a clip of Chuck Schumer. I think it was on either The Daily Show or Colbert, one of them, where it showed Chuck Schumer with his glasses down, and he goes, "We're going to be ready to go once Trump's approval rating drops below 40%. That's when we're going to be able to make our case to the American people." And then the approval rating dropped below 40%, and they didn't do anything. So you got people like Chuck Schumer. You got other people that are kind of out of touch and out of date, and they don't bring any passion. I mean, there's just no, like that you said, they're sloths versus the sharks. And so it's like you need more young energy. And Jean-Pierre clearly, I think that the title of independent and saying she's going independent is going to get her a lot more press than if she had just said, "Oh, my time in the White House with Joe Biden." So I do feel that there's a selling part to that, a selling point to that. And let's go back to the whole Joe Biden thing. We all were shocked. I mean, we knew, we heard, we knew some things weren't right, but that debate, I mean, now when I see clips of it, I just want to turn it off. I don't want to see it. And in my opinion, Joe Biden has said he's going to be a one-term president just to transition us out of the damage that Trump had done. The real noble thing for him to have done would have been to say, "I'm not running for the second term. I'm going to go look after my own health and be with my family." And then we would have had a primary, and we would have had somebody who actually would have had a better chance than Kamala Harris did, because we threw her into the race in the last minute. She did as well as anybody could have. So there's a lot of things to complain about, but I think the overarching thing is we need more energy in the Democratic Party.
Yeah, absolutely. And, either way, even if she had stayed with the Democratic Party, like she was just his press secretary. She wasn't anybody who was governing. She really wasn't anybody that I think a lot of people cared about. And she's not anybody who I think a lot of people have missed since she's been gone from that position. So, I mean, it does feel a little bit opportunistic to me, because it's just like, why are you doing this? And we've seen it before, right? We've seen people leave administrations for whatever reason, and then they write a book about it, and then they're in the press tour, they're in the news for a little bit, like they're doing their thing. They have their extra boost of a 15 minutes and then they go away. But also, it is embarrassing for the Democrats that they're compared to sloths. I met a sloth once and it was great. It was very exciting for me, but like to be compared.
Welcome. It's indisputable. I'm your host, Rashad Richey. Good to be with you. We have a lot on the agenda today, breaking down news of the day, none other than my dear brother, Jackson White. Always fascinating to have his analysis and brilliance. Top story of the day. This is an update. Remember the story of the biker who decided to attack a bar patron. And there's now a dispute over the bar owner's claim. Put it up, full mass. This is going to be ironic, the excuse they gave for the crime. In an update, a group of racist bikers brutally beat a Black customer at a Fort Wayne, Indiana bar. This sparked outrage. We covered it from day one. A quick rationalization came, however, from the establishment's owner. Quote, there are two sides to every story, end quote. Pike's pub owner, Kelly Ross, who was not present when the fight occurred, this was last Friday night, said the melee originated after the Black man refused to pay his tab. Okay? So that's what the narrative is. But a witness to the fight knows the victim and said the owner is dead wrong. So let's get into it. Quote, the bartender told him he could have another drink. The witness told WANE Fort Wayne News. Quote, the owner's boyfriend told him he was cut off. Uh-oh. And the owner's boyfriend was way more drunk than he was. So the owner's boyfriend appeared to be on a power trip when he kicked the Black man, a regular customer, out of the bar, said the witness, who was granted anonymity for fear of retaliation against him and his family from the Outlaws Motorcycle Club who frequent the bar. Many other participants in the fight wore vests with the name Outlaws imprinted on them, and at least one person can be heard shouting racial epithets at the victim. Quote, he planned on paying, the witness said. He wasn't trying to leave without paying. It was never about paying the tab because he always pays his tab. Now, let's analyze so far what we have. You have a brutal attack by a customer. That's not in dispute. The new information that we have is that the owner has a boyfriend who decided to become the owner too. It doesn't work that way. You can't enforce a trespass because no trespass has been issued. Nothing has been warranted. So the first assault came when he was deprived of public access. Anytime there's a public building and people can't access it from the public, you have to provide everyone the same accommodation. It's called public accommodations, and that is a law. If the owner allowed this to happen, the owner is in violation of that statute. Then the owner gives this as if it is two sides of a story. So let's go to La La Land for just a moment and act as if this is a true narrative. So you mean to tell me that the penalty for not paying a bar tab is to be beaten into an inch of your life? Madam, what you have just done is given the prosecution everything they need for a slam dunk case. There's more. The unidentified man was about to leave the establishment when he was confronted by the bikers, the witness recalled. Quote, 3 or more other of them walked in before the victim even got to reply, the witness said. Quote, they were telling him that he needed to leave. He went to leave. And that's when the owner's boyfriend grabbed his arm and said, you're going to pay your tab, and then used another slur. And that's when the outlaws tightened up and squeezed around him. You get the picture? Okay. The witness said that one of the bikers threw the first punch, hitting the victim in the face. That prompted others to join the attack, outnumbering the victim 8-1. I'm from Glenwood. That's called cowards. Nobody jumps a man 8 human beings to 1. He then kicked and punched repeatedly. By the time police were called. He had already been kicked, already been punched over and over again. That's according to the witness. The fight had ended when Allen County deputies dispatched, quote, to have an intoxicated subject removed from the bar. Arrived. The victim, who declined to identify his attackers, was taken to a local hospital in fair condition. The outlaws are affiliated with an Illinois motorcycle club whose roots trace back to 1935. That's according to WANE local news. It now has more than 1,700 members across 176 chapters worldwide, states, and the U.S. Department of Justice, which classifies the club as an outlaw motorcycle gang, means just a regular ass gang that uses its club as a conduit for criminal enterprise, according to them, including weapons and drug trafficking. The station reports that the Fort Wayne chapter has been the subject of multiple investigations by the FBI raids over the last 13 years. The Allen County Sheriff's Department, meanwhile, just assigned a detective to the case. A public information officer told WANE on Monday, quote, "It is very early in the investigation, and he is still getting the case together." The spokesperson said when asked if federal authorities might be called in to assist in the probe of what many believe was a racially motivated hate crime. And the reason they believe that is because racial slurs were used in the midst of said crime, which is the requirement typically to meet the threshold of a hate crime, okay? Horrible what happened to this man, and despicable what this owner has come out to say. That is not two sides to a story, man. When we say that, that is a figure of speech that means one justification may be offset by the other justification. You need to know both context. This is not that kind of story, because even if your context is true, that is not the second side that sets off the first. All right, Jackson, thoughts here?
Yeah, well, a couple things that really stuck out to me in general. First of all, I'm loving this, doing this thing with this mic held up to my face. I feel more relaxed than I ever have on this show. But we gonna get it together though. But anyway, I think a couple of important things. One of them that you pointed out, first and foremost, not paying your tab, that equals physical assault. Like, I mean, we can just justify putting our hands on people as adults, because generally speaking, people are aware that if you beat somebody up, you may have to go to jail for that for years. You know what I'm saying? What if what if he would have died? At the end of the day, that's just not an appropriate solution. And for something where it's like two sides to every story, that typically involves non-violence. Maybe right. You had a misunderstanding about something that happened, or something like that doesn't involve you putting your hands on somebody. So I think you're right that this really just seems like a slam dunk case. And also, to me, it kind of felt like maybe this guy was like showing off for his girlfriend or something like that. Like maybe it was an opportunity for him, to be manly or whatever. But at the end of the day, a group of 8 people beating up on one man over a non-paid tab, like when is that ever an ideal situation? Like, oh, we just ganged up on him. So there's just no defense here. It clearly was a hate crime, and their defense is incredibly weak.
Yeah, so much so it helps the prosecution. All right, we'll bring updates as they come. Hello, story. So SCOTUS, Supreme Court, they have ruled in favor of a white woman in a reverse discrimination suit. Put up the picture full mass at the background. We will analyze. The Supreme Court has sided with a straight white woman in the decision that makes it easier to file reverse discrimination. Now, the reason why this part is important is because discrimination, typically based on the context of the Constitution, is to protect individuals who historically have not been protected. The Supreme Court on Thursday sided with the straight woman in Ohio who filed reverse discrimination. Now, the word straight is there intentionally. You will see in a moment why. The lawsuit against her employer when her gay boss, that's the reason why it's contextualized this way in the actual court ruling. The gay boss declined to promote her, okay? The ruling will make it easier to file suits in some parts of the country. Now, despite the politically divisive debate playing out over the workplace diversity efforts, a fight that has been fueled by Donald Trump, a unanimous coalition of conservative and liberal justices were in the majority, Justice Brown, Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson wrote the opinion for the court. Quote, "Our case law thus makes clear that the standard for proving desperate treatment under Title VII does not vary based on whether or not the plaintiff is a member of a majority group," Jackson wrote. Now, this changes case law, transforms precedent. Why? Because of what I just said earlier. That based on our interpretation until now of the U.S. Constitution, Title VII, that people who are discriminated against must first qualify based on their historical, immutable status. Okay? Now, Marlene Ames started working for Ohio's state government in 2004 and steadily rose through the ranks at the Department of Youth Services. She claims that in 2017, she started reporting to a gay boss and was passed over for a promotion that was offered to another gay woman. This is her claim. Ames was challenging or is challenging a requirement applied in 5 appeals courts across the nation. What is that requirement? That majority individuals raising discrimination claims must demonstrate, quote, background circumstances in order to pursue their suit. A plaintiff might meet that requirement, for instance, by providing statistical evidence documenting a pattern of discrimination against members of a majority. Ames could not do that, so she lost in the lower courts. So here's the contextualization of the high court on that. The reason why that has been basically the measure, we call these things rules, and you measure the rule and make sure all the rules are applied, and all the rules happen in this particular case. The court said, listen, we don't really need background information if you happen to be an individual where the country has provided enough background information for us. Meaning, if you are of a particular group, the country has likely discriminated against you holistically, outwardly, publicly, from racism to other forms of bigotry. And because of that, we don't need background information. You can just bring your case forward, okay? If you're in the majority group, you do need some background information. You're not excluded from filing, but you do have to provide some level of background information because that's the contextualization of the court. Now, a reminder, put her up. Yesterday, we reported that the Supreme Court rejected an appeal filed by Ms. Chanel Nicholson, a Black dancer in Houston, Texas, who claims she has been discriminated against by multiple Houston clubs that place limits on how many Black women they will hire. Okay? All but 2 justices, ironically. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson and Justice Sotomayor determined that the more recent discriminatory acts alleged by Nicholson were not acts that stood on their own, but, quote, continued effects of past discrimination that is no longer actionable due to the statute. Jackson's opinion focused on the allegations from 2017 and 2021, arguing that both alleged discrete instances of discrimination occurred within the 4 years before Nicholson filed a lawsuit, making the Fifth Circuit's claim that the statute of limitations was up patently erroneous. Okay, all of these things are changing and transforming before us. There's an op-ed that I wrote and rolling out when there were many on the left and everyone on the right who said, get rid of affirmative action. Remember that? I wrote an op-ed. Most of it was to those on the left who agreed with it. execution is one thing, implementation is another. I can agree that it has not always been done properly. But in that op-ed argument in Rolling Out Magazine, I made the argument, this is chess, not checkers. They will utilize a victory in the affirmative action arena, which isn't even a policy. Affirmative action is a general framework of committing to diversity, and that's it. And that's nothing else. It doesn't have a requirement of quota. And you also do not get any kind of special treatment, meaning if you didn't qualify academically for an institution, you could not get in front of the admissions committee anyway. So this was not about lower qualifications. All of these things were misnomers and misinformation that the right put out intentionally. But the bottom line is, you stand for getting rid of affirmative action, understand the next domino that must fall. I say the same thing to individuals who may stand against our brothers and sisters in the LGBTQ community. Because if you stand against them, they utilize that to create a proxy to stand against you. This is how they operate. All right, Jackson, thoughts here?
Yeah, so to me, a lot of what this is just a continued extension of corporate America and the right wing in this country's attempt and mission to subjugate the public. So whether it's stuff like this, because as you pointed out, discrimination tends to imply the majority versus the minority. You don't really need protections if you already have a leg up in society. So, whether you look at something like this or the Supreme Court, which is extremely political and illegitimate, by the way, they're supposed to not be political, but, we're long past that point. But you look at things like the reversal of Roe v. Wade, how the Supreme Court is continuously giving Donald Trump more executive power to do much of what he wants. And Donald Trump is throwing cases that other federal judges have asked him on to the Supreme Court because he has faith that they'll look out for him. They're just letting him dismantle financial institutions. The constant push towards dismantling healthcare in this country, like Donald Trump's big, beautiful bill that he's trying to get through. Yeah, there's a couple Republicans in the Senate who are saying they won't vote for it. We'll see how that goes because they typically do. I do have to point out Rand Paul, who's against the big, beautiful bill. He's not against it because tens of millions of people will lose their healthcare. He's against it because it's just the deficit. So screw your healthcare, but the debt and the deficit. You know what I'm saying? Like we got to get that under control. But this really all just comes down to, look, why can't you just do and be better? Like you sent this, you filed a case because you didn't get a promotion, you didn't get what you were looking for. Just do a better job or switch jobs. That's just life. That's life. Like you don't always get what you want. You just don't. You can't have it all. Sometimes other people win over you. Sometimes people get a look before you. That's just life. Sometimes you get dumped. Sometimes people die. Things happen. You got to deal with it. So this whole thing to me is just childish, but very unsurprising that the Supreme Court would do this because this is what they're doing. And unfortunately for everybody else, for all of us, these people are going to be in the Supreme Court for decades. The Brett Kavanaughs, and everybody else. So we're just getting rolling with this, but this is just class warfare and cultural warfare. The less opportunities regular people have, whether that's, middle class people, LGBTQ, colored people, whatever it is, the less likely it is for them to be able to climb in society at all. So that's all this is. It's plain and simple.
Yeah, and guaranteed to be ripple effects and updates from this. We'll bring it to you. All right, hell of a thing. Man holding a phone, shot fatally by the cops. Again, here it is.
On the ground, get on the ground, on the ground, I'm telling you, dude, on the ground.
In this clip from Officer Deke's body camera, which we have now slowed down, you can see Lewis is near the trunk of the car when officers arrive. Again, you can see his hands are visible and empty. Lewis does not obey commands to get on the ground and instead moves toward the driver's side door.
Put up the picture full mass. Here's what we have. Unarmed Black man is fatally shot by the police while holding a phone. Colorado family has now sued after another unarmed Black man is shot and killed with his arms raised. unarmed 37-year-old Black man is Kalen Lewis. Mr. Lewis was shot dead and killed by a Colorado cop last year after raising his hands while holding a cell phone. But it took nearly a month of Aurora police to acknowledge Lewis had been unarmed and holding a cell phone when he was shot and killed by a cop named Michael Diak, despite multiple body cameras capturing the shooting. The officer fired a single shot within seconds of first telling Lewis to get on the ground. Body camera video shows Mr. Lewis was bending down with his hands up in complete compliance, apparently trying to comply with conflicting commands, by the way. 18th Judicial District Attorney John Kellner said his office determined, quote, there is no criminal liability on the part of Officer Michael Diak stemming from this OIS, end quote. The case was presented to a grand jury for consideration, but the grand jury, quote, declined to accept the case for further investigation, according to the DA. Now, anytime there's a grand jury involved, it is secretive. The format is generally not allowable for public review, meaning no public records request will be adhered to, and the prosecutor gets to present the case as they choose without any type of oversight. My point is, if you don't want an indictment, go to a grand jury and argue a weak case. Last month, exactly 1 year after the shooting, Lewis's family filed a wrongful death lawsuit against the Aurora Police Department, accusing the cops of using excessive force and negligence. A little probable cause. So Lewis's shooting took place May 23rd, 2024, as the SWAT team was moving in to arrest him on a warrant for an attempted murder stemming from a shooting earlier that month. In the shooting that took place on May 5th, 2024, surveillance video shows a passenger from inside the red Monte Carlo shooting toward individuals inside of a black SUV, according to an investigation by the local 9 News channel. This was published October 2024. So the local police responded to the shooting and found shell casings in the area, also discovered a bystander who had nothing to do with the dispute, but was taking place between the individuals and the vehicles, had been shot in the shoulder. Police claimed a tipster had told them Lewis had been driving the red Monte Carlo. And state records revealed that a red Monte Carlo was also registered to Lewis. But other than that, there was no probable cause tying Lewis to the shooting because the license plate number on the Monte Carlo was not visible in the video. That's according to Scott Robinson, an attorney, as this attorney described based on legal analysis to 9 News. So in 2021, Aurora police were sued over another incident in which they wrongly detained a black family at gunpoint, 2020, ordering a mother and her 3 children to lie on the ground, wrongly believing the mother had been driving a stolen car. In Lewis's case, it should have been obvious to trained cops that he had only been holding a cell phone, the claim states. Quote, Keelan was simply holding a cell phone, which was easily visible to the naked eye at close distance, that the officers were to Keelan when defendant Diak shot him. The Aurora Police Department has a notorious history of profiling and abusing black people, according to Elijah McClain. Remember that? Including our dear brother Elijah McClain. Remember that? One of the saddest stories in the world. Young black man killed by a fatal overdose of ketamine, 2019, confronted by police for just walking, wearing headphones. That resulted in a $15 million settlement for his family. The officer who decided to kill Mr. Lewis, at minimum, a case should have been presented for negligent homicide. That's minimum. That's the absolute bare minimum. Evidenced by the fact that no other cop shot Mr. Lewis, who was with Officer Dieck, because the other officers concluded, based on their non-negligence, that Mr. Lewis posed no threat. It was only the gross negligence of Officer Dieck who posed the threat to Mr. Lewis. All right. Jackson, thoughts here?
Yeah, the more we cover these stories and, the more just being in this line of work, you see the arguments against like systemic racism within law enforcement. The more you realize that those people who make those arguments just don't care about this and don't like black people, because what are the arguments that you see? It's usually they deserved it in some way. He should have done this, he should have done that, he shouldn't have ran, he should have kept his hands up or whatever. And if there's no real defense for what happened, like none available, it's, oh, well, so what? It's just, part of the job. Things happen. Basically, police officers get a whoopsie clause, oh, my bad, I killed somebody, no big deal. That's just part of the job. But then we've seen instance after instance where police officers indeed do have the ability to discern who they should be violent with or not. We've seen videos of people who have guns or knives and the police officers are doing their hardest, working their hardest to calm them down. And those people are usually white when that happens. And they'll use statistics about like, well, you look at the stats and yeah, but the country's like 60% white. So there's so many more. So those numbers don't balance out, especially when it's the fact that crime is more prevalent in areas of poverty. That really doesn't have anything to do with race or ethnicity. Right. If you don't have as many opportunities, access to jobs, healthy food, water, whatever it is, you're more likely to commit crimes because you're just trying to survive. You're growing up in an environment where you're dealing with a lot of anger, pain, possibly being raised by people who are a mess in a lot of ways. Like, people don't have choices in these matters. So, again, if you're poor, if you're black, if you're brown, in a lot of ways you deserve it and just shut up. So, at the end of the day, it's tiring to see this so much, but we have to talk about it, because if we don't get involved locally, if we don't really make a push, this just isn't gonna stop. It's just not. What reason do they have for it to stop? No criminal liability for shooting somebody with a cell phone. So again, it's really sad to consistently see that so much of the American public just flat out doesn't care about black lives at all.
And you make a great point connecting crime to poverty. That has much more statistical significance over a prerequisite to a crime than race does. And if anyone ever attempts to make that argument to you, remind them that if you live in a black community and the household median income is $150,000 plus, guess what the crime rate is black on black? 0%. Isn't that something? In that neighborhood, they have a less than 1% black on black crime ratio. Household median income, 150,000 plus. All right, we got more on the other side. Indisputable, stick and stay.
I don't care if you're Christian. In fact, I will fight for you to have your religious liberty and practice your Christianity. I believe in that. I don't believe in Christianity, which means that you do not get to dictate the way I live my life based on your religion. I don't care what the Bible says. You have every right in the world. All those women who identify with your religion have every right in the world to not get an abortion, to not take birth control, but they do not have the right to dictate my life and what I decide to do with my body. I don't care about goddamn. I'm so tired of having nonstop conversations about what the Bible says. You live your life in the way that you interpret the Bible. Again, I don't care, but you don't get to take the Bible and tell me, well, the Bible says this in this chapter in this verse. I don't care. I don't care. I don't believe in it. And I have the right, based on our Constitution, to not believe in it.
Here I am, Nancy Nancy Pelosi saying this country needs a strong Republican Party, and we do.
No one is representing what I call the silent majority, which is about 2/3 of this country, indisputably progressive.
But now we say the time has come for regime change in American television.
The Young Turks Network.
You know, you have the Young Turks saying this is the time to fight for our values.
Young Turks is the oldest left media institution I believe that there is. Real front runner in the online media space.
You guys might know us.
Biggest online left of center outlet that exists.
All of you know the Young Turks.
People from this district heard about Justice Democrats by watching your show.
Thanks to the Young Turks for covering Trayvon Martin's case early on when few people were covered.
They don't stop, I won't stop. Racism won't stop, so I won't stop.
Species are at risk of going extinct. Major media outlets did not dedicate much time at all to that.
We reached a whole heap of people with our progressive message.
We're not the Young Turks. You're the Young Turks.
That 300 million is a pretty good number, Well, that's the size of the U.S. population. You know what our next target is? The size of the entire world.
We just crossed 5 billion views on YouTube.
I mean, imagine 10 years ago thinking one day we would have looked at you like, are you nuts?
Young Turks has just passed another milestone. 25 billion lifetime views.
Damn.
Too strong, way too strong. That's 25 billion times someone watched the progressive message delivered to people all over the world. You know who helped to do that? You guys did. Our members and our audience are amazing, and they helped us to reach 2 generations, both millennials and Gen Z. They're both super progressive. And I gotta tell you, we're just getting started. Thank you. All right, lots of comments. You guys are the best.
I'm gonna read a few comments from our members.
Mr. Methuselah says on YouTube, super chat, thanks for all the important work you do for TYT for the movement.
Do you know who had the first super chat when I got back from vacation? You won't be surprised to find out. Billy B. Taylor. What do you know? Billy says, rejoice, for Dragon Daddy has returned.
This question sent to us by Izzy Sanchez Jr. Is it me, or is Meghan McCain talking as fast as Ben Shapiro? Is that the way the right tries to look smart and intellectual? Well, yes.
Michael Nathan writes it on Twitter. Did Anna choose Cenk's outfit today? I'm sure it wasn't Cenk himself. Man Bun Cenk and Skinny Jeans says, so now Anna has pointed out, okay, that's his handle.
T. Joyce, 1971, saying Donald Trump is good at pulling out of things, NAFTA, the Iran deal, NATO. It's just too bad Fred Trump didn't.
All right, welcome back. Always good to be with you. We got a lot of comments. I will read as many as I can. I thank you all in advance. All right, Kimmy Cool. Welcome back, Dr. Jackson. Hello, everyone. Hello back to you. Thank you. And Bob Dabalina. Surprise, surprise, the bar owner carries water for the biker gang instead of the single customer. Yeah, truth succumbs to profits. Yeah, that's right. Thomas of Thomas. Straight people have a long history, a long record of claiming to be a victim. Gay panic defense, trans people in bathrooms. Now it's being here to get a promotion. Yeah. And roll_Sam. Nowadays, a cell phone is much worse for the police than a legit bona fide firearm or weapon. There can be more damage done to the police with a cell phone camera than a weapon. So the police shoot to kill. It is unfortunate that you have state legislatures who are pushing and passing bills to restrict, eliminate a citizen's right to do so by giving ridiculous distance laws, and then a cop can arrest you if you mistakenly violate some distance law that nobody knows about. All right. Okay. Well, got something for you. Ladies and gentlemen, I wish you Karen would.
You want to call the police on them for having a barbecue on a Sunday.
I feel free! Back off!
I'm going to tell them there's an African-American man threatening my life.
POV, you're just a CNA trying to make it.
I want a mouthful of your nipples. Can I?
Can you what, sir? What's wrong? Can you what?
Play with your breasts.
No, you cannot.
God.
Put up the picture. She did not reveal the person, and she posted, the poster wrote, imagine having to feed this person all day. This is a CNA worker. I just thought I would stop a moment and share. Thank you for letting us know this happened. I had no idea things like this were an occurrence. 2, thank you for keeping your cool, respectfully declining. I'm sure you've declined many times prior to that and possibly many times after. You should not have to go through it. I hope there's a remedy within the context of your employment, because no matter what job you have, nobody should be subjected to that, period. All right? Okay. All right, Jackson, thoughts here.
You know, this is exactly why the saying "freakier than an old man" exists. I don't know if you ever heard that saying before, but yeah, you freakier than an old man because you didn't live your life. You know what I'm saying? What you got to lose? You didn't had all your ups and downs, and you don't know when you're gonna go. So he just shot his shot, shoot or shoot. You feel me? I mean, jokes aside, obviously this was inappropriate. I mean, women go through stuff like this constantly. This was just like a day in the life of an average woman. Like by average, I mean like any old woman can go through this. Like because all women really have to do to have sexual opportunities is exist. And that's like all they have to do. But yeah, I mean, women get harassed walking down the street, online. And a lot of guys are just relentless with it. But it's definitely unfortunate that this sister had to deal with that. But I'm sure this wasn't the first time, which is why she probably recorded it, because it's happened so often. But yeah, nah, man, freakier than an old man. That's where this comes from.
Yeah, that's my first time hearing that phraseology.
But you learned something today. You learned something from me today, Mr. PhD learning something from me.
Damn right I did. All right, okay. This is an update to a story we brought. Remember the principal who decided to call the police on parents who were trying to create remedy for their child, and other parents withdrew their children because of it immediately. I said on that show, oh, that principal will be gone. Well, that day has come. Put up the picture full mass. Now, this story has a couple of twists and turns, but the update is that Miss Teresa Rost, who's the principal of a Catholic school in Oregon, was fired from a job weeks after she called the police on Black parents. Mike, Phillips, and Karis Studemeyer. Those are the parents. They were there because they were meeting to address an incident in which their 4th grade son was called the N-word by a classmate. This is a dutiful parenting team. They are both there in order to have a conversation about a bullying incident with a racial context. As a reminder, the Madeline School in Portland, Oregon made headlines earlier this year after Mike Phillips and Karis Studemeyer. Phillips spoke out about a racial incident. They say it ended in a heated confrontation involving the school's principal, Miss Teresa Rost. The parents said they were called to the school in March after their son's classmate called him the N-word. When they met with the principal, demanded accountability, and pointed to a previous incident involving their older son that they claimed was insufficiently handled, the principal requested the couple to leave the grounds. But when they refused, she called the police. Now, in the 911 recording obtained by KGW, the principal can be heard requesting officers' presence at the school because of, quote, parents yelling at employees and refusing to leave. Quote, do you know what their names are? Asked the 911 operator. Oh, no, answered Principal Ross. Okay, are they white, black, Hispanic, Asian? Asked the operator. Second one, replied Roth. You understand what they're the second one you named.
I'm being listened to right now.
Right. Okay. That answer alone, if you justify to call them the police, they black, or whatever race they may be, here are their names. If you're justified, if a crime is taking place and enforcement of the law needs to happen, you will absolutely provide information. She already lied, so she doesn't know their names. This sets it up for random black people to be harassed by the police, by the way. So the principal requested to stay on the line with the dispatcher as if something dangerous is happening, okay? And the recording caught snippets of a conversation, her conversation with Phillips, with the Phillips family. Quote, you want to nail me to a cross over and over again, and it's not productive, the principal said in the recording. Quote, I'm right here advocating for your child who did come sit in my chair in my office and does trust me. When a voice in the background says, he does not. The principal replies, okay, that's fine. He acts like he does. End quote. This is what happens when you give a carer in a professional position of public trust. This individual has failed to recognize that the scenario is not about her negligence. The scenario is about the child's safety physically and emotionally. That's what it's actually about. Now, your negligence is a catalyst to this. Yes. However, the goal is the child. Days later, the Phillips son was then expelled, prompting backlash from the school community. The Phillips demanded that the school apologize for the incident, dismiss the principal, and investigate the racial slur said to their son. Several community members joined their campaign and demanded that the school re-enroll the Phillips son and amend its policies. The family's petition garnered more than 5,000 signatures. Mike Phillips previously told the Oregonian that Miss Rost, the principal, now one call was a complete abuse of power. Quote, you have to understand that a black man having the cops called on him is a totally different implication. It's a complete abuse of power, a look what I have over you, Phillips said. Quote, you're calling the cops on me and kicking out my son because of what he heard? My family's the victim in this? There is no cross you can hide behind. The reason he said cross is the religious nature of the Catholic institution, which was well played, sir. And he's right. Why are you suspending my son? Because he overheard what we said? There's no justification for it. So shortly after the incident, a student witness decided to come forward and stated that he did, in fact, overhear the slur. But the principal diminished the child's claim. Initially, it was, well, nobody else can corroborate. So now you have a witness, but the principal decided to diminish the witness. When that child's parents met with the principal, she told them she suspected their son had made up the entire incident and recommended that he see a therapist to be deprogrammed from the anti-racist training he received during his previous enrollment at a public school in Portland. I told you this is what happens when you hire Karens in positions of public trust. 2 children, 2 incidents of bullying. 1, well, you got to get expelled now because your parents said something. 2nd, well, you obviously need to go see a psychiatrist. You are programmed. You must be woke. It's unclear whether the school has launched an investigation into the racial slur, which this It's the part that helps the child. In response to her termination, the principal told KPTV she felt, quote, deeply betrayed by her priest and the archdiocese. I mean, damn, they wrong too? So she's deeply offended by church leadership here. Neither officials at the Medellin school nor the Archdiocese of Portland have responded to the outlet's request for comment on the principal. They will not respond. They realize now they were wrong in appointing and supporting such a ridiculous leader. No self-awareness, no self-analysis at all. And still, we are unclear if anyone has addressed the thing that hurt the young brother who was called the N-word. And I guarantee it didn't just happen to him. It's a systemic issue. It always is. All right, Jackson, thoughts here?
Well, this is a perfect opportunity to say bye, Felicia. You know what I'm saying? Bye, Principal Felicia. Go ahead and get up out of here. But it really says a lot that this family was able to get 5,000 signatures for something like this in a school district. You know, this isn't like a public policy type of thing. This isn't, you know, like something about like expanding Medicaid that everybody would be paying attention to. It's hard to get that many signatures. So that really says a lot, not just about this case, but also that community's probably overall feelings towards Principal Felicia, as well as the school district itself. But I always love the opportunity, whether it's in my life personally, when I make mistakes, or when people make mistakes with me or anybody, the power of, my bad, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. Instead of just, no, I gotta keep pushing this because I can't be wrong about nothing. I'm the one who's in a position of authority. Yeah, but you abusing your authority. And when you do that, people don't really respect you as much. You become a tyrant in a lot of ways if you're not diplomatic, if you're not able to be vulnerable about stuff. But I mean, this was just unnecessary. And again, I think the most powerful thing that shows how wrong she was is the fact that they got 5,000 signatures for this.
Yeah, seriously. And noted that after she called the police, in my opinion, she should have been fired that day. But it did have to go through the ranks of the church. We'll bring updates if there's an update to bring. We got more on the other side. Indisputable, stick and stay. Indisputable is still the fastest growing news show in America compared to CNN, Fox News, and 30 other networks. We tell the truth on Indisputable because the truth is indisputable. We go places that other news media outlets refuse to go. When there were human rights abuses happening at the Victorville prison, guards and members of the community contacted us.
You, through your investigative reporting, unearthed very troubling allegations about specific forms of abuse and discrimination in the federal prison system.
It really doesn't take much to be a trusted voice. All it takes is to be fearless, report on matters, be an advocate. I called it the bullpen intentionally because it's a place of preparation. We present individuals who may have an opposing view, so we debate. Sometimes we interview individuals because their stories deserve to be heard. A survivor of significant police misconduct and his attorney. We covered this story earlier, and to remind you of the horror of one man being shot at damn near 100 times by the police. We take time on this show to showcase the temper tantrums of Karens in the wild. We do this not because we want to see people's emotional outbursts in public, but because these incidents are emblematic of a bigger societal issue taking place across the nation, and it has to be checked. My friend, my big homie, attorney at law, Benjamin Crump.
I just want to thank you, man. Educated, articulate brothers like yourself speak truth to power. It makes a great difference in changing the landscape in America. So
listen, no matter what you do, don't allow the politics of ideology to evaporate the soul that still exists inside of you. They don't stop, I don't stop. Racism won't stop, I won't stop. Systemic bias won't stop, I won't stop. People still need health care, so I won't stop. People still need criminal justice systems reform, so I won't stop. You won't stop either. welcome back. Always good to be with every single one of you. Okay, I'm going to read a few of these comments. Thank you, everybody. Fan for life _23 says, Lord have mercy. God help this woman have a better day today. That's right. Neon Death 07 says, CNAs are underappreciated. Yeah, I agree. And about the principal, LB things, stuff and more. Wrong. You get that other child's parents in there and talk about what happened. There you go. B. Brown. Hopefully she'll never lead another school. Racism is expensive. That's right. And Queen Gigi from GI. Same thing happened to my son. Watching principal was going to call a gun. She did not like what sister and I was asking her. Wow. So sad. Snack Panther, thank you for that. Snack Panther. Spirit X Black Boss B of the Bayou is asking, where in the hell are our what in the red state hells? They're coming back with a vengeance as well. All right. We got something for you coming. Thank you for inquiring, but we're on it. All right. Well, Linda McMahon believes that Holocaust denial is a credible, diverse viewpoint. Here it is.
Do you think that Holocaust education in our schools is a DEI program? There's no card for that. That's just yes or no.
I can look at it, whatever card.
Holocaust education, is it a DEI? You can have a press conference to say whatever you want. I just need a quick answer to this.
Your soliloquy
is Holocaust, because this is my time. Is Holocaust education a DEI program?
No.
Is African American Studies a DEI program?
I think I answered that with one.
I'm asking it again.
Listen, we should
just yes or no.
We should be able to teach courses.
My point is they are DEI programs, both of them, because students need diversity, equity, and inclusion to understand their environments. So both Holocaust education and the teaching of African American history are important, which is why the state of Connecticut requires it in our social studies curriculum. You're talking out of both sides of your mouth. You can't support one without supporting the other.
Does refusing to hire a Holocaust denier as a member of Harvard's history department faculty count as an ideological litmus test?
I believe that there should be diversity of viewpoints relative to teachings and opinions on campuses.
That diverse viewpoints. The same people who denied the election, the same people told Trump, hey, it wasn't stolen, Trump. You lost. Same people. The same people who say racism doesn't exist. Same people say actually the only racism that exists are against primarily white men, are the same individuals who have a diverse viewpoint as it relates to facts. Now, right on cue, here comes CNN's resident dumbass, Trump apologist Scott Jennings, to defend McMahon's comments. Here it is.
A diversity of viewpoints about Holocaust denying?
That's not what she said. That's not what she said. That's not at all what just happened there.
Hold on.
She's saying that college faculty are uniformly partisan, liberal, progressive, radical.
All right. I don't understand.
She was not answering what is a patently ridiculous question. And no Republican should take any lectures about anti-Semitism right now from Democrats.
A no card in front of her to tell her the answer. And this is what happens when you have somebody who lied about having an education degree. They didn't teach about the Holocaust maybe when she was getting her French degree. If she actually has that. The reality is,
you're accusing her of being a Holocaust?
No. Is any school allowed to say that these are facts, and if you don't believe in facts, you cannot teach here? Are they allowed to do that?
The question is, what is the litmus test today? And what kind of faculty do you want? Do you want people who all have the same views or a diversity of views?
When you answer my question with a question, you are dodging.
When you ask me questions that I think kind of ridiculous framing of this issue, then I think you're misconstruing the issue. How is it a ridiculous framing?
I don't see how she works for that clown every day. Now, the question is simple, okay? If anywhere in the world, employment of that agency should depend on your healthy understanding of what is a fact and what is fiction, I would classify a higher educational institution is among the top. And you're telling me that you would be in violation of discriminatory actions if you told someone applying for a professor job, you can't get this job because you deny facts of history as if they are debatable. All of a sudden, now the person in trouble is the individual who has said that, which is common sense, at an educational institution, if this becomes norm. It's ridiculous for what has become or is attempting to become qualified discrimination. Now, Reese Colbert, who will be on the program, she'll be in dispute in a few days, and Abby Phillip took Scott Jennings to task, obviously, and rightfully so, for defending this surreal answer during a recent hearing. Colbert pointed out that McMahon's ignorance about history, despite overseeing the Department of Education. For example, during that same hearing, Representative Summer Lee asked McMahon about pivotal events in Black history. Here's what happened.
Your thoughts on, simple yes or no, if this is a legal DEI, an example, would you say that it would be an illegal DEI for a lesson plan on the Tulsa Race Massacre?
I'd have to get back to you on that.
Do you know what the Tulsa Race Massacre is?
I'd like to look into it more and get back to you on it.
Okay, so I look forward to that. How about the book Through My Eyes by Ruby Bridges, for instance?
I haven't read that.
Have you learned about Ruby Bridges?
If you have specific examples you'd like
that was a specific example.
I'll be very happy.
It was an incredibly specific example.
I named the specific your questions, and I will look into it and get back to you.
You see, if you were an actual student of education or policy expert in education or teacher involved in the national aspect of education, you would be informed and actually have diverse viewpoints because you know diverse views. But you're not. You're not informed. You're not interested. You are not trying to become the actual active Department of Education head. You are simply there to dismantle it. Why? Because that's what Trump said. Your job is to destroy it. Why would you spend any time studying? Why would you spend any time researching and trying to live up to the sanctity of that position rather than shrink it to fit you? Why would you do that? Because you know what you're there for. You are there to destroy it. Representative Summer Lee slammed the Trump administration's DEI, anti-DEI agenda and its impact on public education, strikingly, comparing it to the racist era of Jim Crow. Quote, when you call for removing of equity and inclusion and diversity and accessibility from schools in favor of, quote, traditional American values, it's indistinguishable from post-Civil War South advocating to rewrite history when the lost cause narrative and to censor truths about slavery, said Lee, quote, this department's financial aid policies harken back to a time when higher education was reserved for affluent, well-connected, and predominantly white students, end quote. In a statement to the Griot, Lee said, quote, it's pretty telling and deeply troubling that this administration is more focused on chasing down pride flags and banning books than addressing any of the actual crisis facing our public education system, end quote. Even if Secretary McMahon was better versed in American history, there is no doubt her department would further attempt to whitewash history and ensure students don't have access to the facts. Lee told the Griot that the Trump administration's, quote, lack of knowledge, denial of history, and open racism, end quote, doesn't mean students across the country should be deprived of learning opportunities or access to a quality education. She added, clearly, they're still needed, and clearly they are. Now, we can wax poetic about the Trump administration's violation of standing policy, violation of really the consciousness of those that are good faith human beings, but also understand the other context. It puts the emphasis on us to properly educate our children and other children, the children we mentor, on true historical education as it relates to this nation and to this era. And that's it. We just have to do more ourselves. And at some point, I do believe in a great restoration that would take place, and that restoration will be led by you. All right, Jackson, thoughts here?
Well, it should, come to absolutely nobody's surprise that Linda McMahon doesn't know the answer to any of these, because at the end of the day, the reason that she's the head of the Department of Education is because she donated $20 million to Donald Trump's 2024 campaign. That's how much she gave. That's why she's there. I mean, and let alone Linda McMahon. You got Howard Lutnick, who's the head of the Department of Commerce. And if you remember him, he was on the news, I think a couple months ago, talking about Social Security and how, like, if my mom missed a Social Security check, it wouldn't be that big of a deal. Like, yeah, well, you're a billionaire, so congratulations. You got Dr. Oz. You got RFK Jr. You got Scott Bessent, who's the head of the department, or the Secretary of the Treasury, rather. And he's just some billionaire, former head of a hedge fund. So all of these people are unqualified. And this is nothing new, but this administration, Trump's second administration, is far more corrupt and far more unhinged than the first one. So again, that's the only reason why she's there. And then the whole notion that, well, we want multiple viewpoints. Your viewpoint can be totally incorrect. So what good is it if it's wrong, especially when it's at that level? When this information is spreading from the head down and this is what people are taking as the truth, your viewpoint doesn't matter if it's false. So who cares? And also, at the end of the day, these people are just blatantly racist. So anything that has anything to do with Black history, they don't want to acknowledge it. And the reason why Linda McMahon, of course, said that Holocaust, that section is DEI, but not Black history, or rather that's not DEI, but anything to do with Black is DEI. It's because the Holocaust victims were white. They were white Europeans, Polish people, and stuff like that. So that's really the distinction. It's really as simple as that. But yeah, $20 million to get you the head of any department in this country, and never forget that that's why she's where she is.
That's right. And all of them believe in DEI. I see them supporting Israel. As a matter of fact, you would be un-American, according to them, if you do not. And the last time I checked, our Israeli brothers and sisters are not here, and they're not white men. All right. Hell of a thing. There's an update. Black mayor, 2 previous officials of a city, deep South Georgia, all arrested wrongfully for election fraud at that. Put up the picture full mass. I went to this city. It's called Camilla, Georgia. It is in deep South Georgia. I went there about 7 years ago when I was the political correspondent for CBS News Atlanta. I'm going to give you the update on what they have done to this mayor and to the remaining city officials. I will give you context to what the law is and judicial ruling. But before I do that, I'm going to take you to a portion of my coverage of Camilla, Georgia, roughly 7 years ago, when they elected the first Black male mayor in its history. Here's what happened.
Tell, for those who may not know it, what's happening in Camilla, Georgia?
Well, back in December, I began boycotting my city council to protest invidious racial segregation and discrimination within my city.
The mayor gave me a letter.
Well, my letter is generally asking anyone within this jurisdiction in my capacity as mayor to cooperate with you.
So I took this letter to City Hall.
Well, I have a letter from the mayor who is encouraging cooperation, okay? Because of the allegations about racism, bigotry, prejudice in the system. Is there racism, prejudice, and bias
in Camilla?
Not that I know of. I've been working here 60 years.
Have you heard the allegations about the city cemetery being split between black people on one side, white people on another side, and a fence that split the two? Are you aware of that?
I am.
You said you were getting complaints from citizens?
Absolutely, yes.
Maybe you should be talking to the citizens.
Oh, I have. Is there racism, prejudice from city government toward residents of Camilla, Georgia?
Again, I ask if you will talk to Miss Brenda Cross, okay?
We're talking about citizens in Camilla that have made these allegations
But
against.
I'm not in a position to answer those questions, and once again, I'll be glad to get you a meeting scheduled with our city manager.
Okay, where's the city manager at today?
He doesn't work on Friday.
Do you know any racist white people in Camilla, Georgia?
Not that I'm aware of.
There are no.
I've never run across them. I'll put it that way.
You have never come in contact with any racist white person ever in Camilla, Georgia?
No.
Can you read this letter, ma'am? I have a letter from the mayor.
No, thank you, sir. See the city manager, city clerk.
They're complaining about government. Do you not work for government?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Are you willing to answer my questions?
No.
Was the cemetery actually segregated black and white?
You would need to fill out an open records request, and you need to talk to Mr. Sykes.
I need to fill out an open records request to find out if black people are buried next to white people.
Yes, sir.
This city is 70% African American. How many black police officers do you have? Do you guys have more than one black police officer?
Yes, we have 2 recruits that are going to the academy right now.
You have 2 black police officers.
Yes, sir. We have 1 black police officer and 2 recruits.
So I went outside of the police precinct. There were 2 officers leaving the building, and I approached these officers. I really just want to talk to the chief of police. No, I can't talk to the chief? Cops running away from me. That's a first. I can't talk to the chief of police. Okay. All right. Everybody's ignoring me, but I got a letter from the mayor. We were able to make a difference in that community, but upon arrival, yes, the city-owned cemetery had a fence that separated where black people could be buried and where white people could be buried. I saw it with my own eyes. The place where white people can be buried looked like a slice of heaven. Black folk could be buried on the other side, and it was, well, deteriorated. The city manager ended up tearing that fence down like a coward at 3 a.m. in the morning to avoid publicity. When the mayor was elected, they took away his power of purse, meaning he received no money. They also would not give him keys to City Hall, so he had to wait for somebody to open up City Hall in order to go to work. That was the insanity happening then. The insanity that is happening today. Same town, Camilla, Georgia. They have arrested the new mayor, Mr. Kevin Owens. Put him up full mast. On May 28th, a reminder, on May 28th, 2025, Camilla, Georgia, Mayor Kevin Owens, the interim city manager, Cheryl Ford, and former election superintendent, Renette Williford, were all arrested on charges of election fraud and conspiracy. This unprecedented move represents more than a local political dispute. It marks the latest chapter in Southwest Georgia's 157-year struggle against systemic voter oppression, suppression, and repression, the judicial complicity in corporate and political power structures. So to fully grasp the gravity, and I wrote an op-ed and Rolling Out, you all can check it out, but to fully grasp the gravity of this moment, we must confront Camilla's blood-stained history of racial terrorism and analyze these charges through the prism of federal voting rights. These are laws. So Georgia's election code and a disturbing national pattern of weaponizing legal systems against Black electoral empowerment was only a few years ago in 2018 that the city of Camilla, which is located in Deep South Georgia, again, removed the fence that separated Black and white residents in the city-owned cemetery. The city, at that time, also did not employ 1 Black police officer. They didn't have anyone actually employed at that time that was Black, even though the city is majority African American. Official press release came from Mr. Dwayne Burley. He's the mayor pro tem. He is the second in charge of city council. In his press release, he says, quote, "Today, Mayor Kevin Owens, interim city manager, Sheriff Ford and former election superintendent Renette Williford were arrested and charged with election fraud and conspiracy to commit election interference. The arrests have shocked the community and raised serious concerns about the ongoing targeting of public officials who upheld the integrity of our local electoral process. We have been informed that none of the three officials will be allowed to appear before a judge until Monday at 9 a.m. A delay for which Magistrate Judge Bubba Lamb has not provided clear justification. These arrests appear politically motivated and retaliatory. Central to the controversy is the candidacy of Mr. Ventura Pollard, who was deemed qualified to run for office by both Mrs. Williford and Ms. Ford, despite Judge Gary McCorvey initially ordering Mr. Pollard to remove his name from the ballot. Now, I got more. Remember, this is the press release from the mayor pro tem, city official, explaining to the world, here's what has happened. He goes on to say, when that effort failed, he directed the election superintendent to forcibly remove Pollard from the race. After Mrs. Williford refused to comply with what many believed to be an unlawful order, the judge recused himself. Judge McLean was assigned to the case. Judge McLean decided to escalate the pressure by threatening to arrest Mr. Pollard if he was not removed. Armed deputies were sent by the local sheriff to serve Mrs. Williford with the directive, an act widely viewed as intimidation. November 4th, 2024, both Renette Williford and Sheriff Ford decided to resign their positions. On that same day, the city council came together under the advice of seemingly is the attorney and possibly someone from the Secretary of State's office. They said, listen, it's best not to proceed with the election to avoid incurring a fine due to the absence of a certified election superintendent. You don't have a certified election superintendent anymore. Why? Because you don't ran them out of town like you do everybody else. They resigned. They left. The mayor of a small city in Georgia and two former election officials were placed under arrest, jailed on felony charges stemming from their efforts last November to halt a local election after one of the mayor's allies was disqualified from a city council race. The mayor, Kevin Owens, was being held at the Mitchell County Jail on Friday, 2 days after a grand jury indicted him on felony charges of election interference and a misdemeanor count of conspiring to commit election fraud. Also jailed were the city's former election superintendent, Renette Williford, and her former deputy superintendent, Sheriff Ford. These are older individuals who just work for the city. They're working a government job. They've never been in any kind of trouble like this, and they're trying to commit conspiracy, fraud, or nothing else. They had a conscience. They had a heart. They had a moral compass. And instead of doing the non-noble thing, which would be keep your job and don't do it, they said we would simply resign. We resign. Respectfully, we resign. They gave it up instead of doing what's corrupt or protesting the order. They just said, we resign. Wasn't good enough for them. Wasn't good enough for the powers that be. Also jailed, obviously, the superintendent and the former deputy superintendent and election superintendent. Chaos roiled special elections for a pair of the city council seats in November of last, and amid a long-standing legal battle over local politics in the town. It's a farming community. It's about 5,000 people in rural Southwest Georgia. I know Mayor Owens. The case revolved around Ventura Pollard. This is a city council removed from office last summer after a judge ruled he was not a Camilla resident. So what has happened? The residents of Camilla, majority African-American, voted in Pollard. Pollard is removed by a judicial order, but voted in
by democratic process. Pollard ran to regain the position in fall in a special election. Another judge ordered Pollard disqualified and ruled that votes for him should be discarded. In addition, the city was ordered to post signs saying votes for Pollard would not be counted. Once again, judicial orders. On November 4th, the day before Election Day, both Williford and Ford quit. They resigned as the city's two top election officials. The elections were held, albeit several hours behind schedule, after Superior Court Judge Heather Lanier appointed new supervisors to oversee voting and ordered polls to remain open until nearly 4 a.m. Elections for president and Congress and other offices were not affected. Now, here's the context, okay? The voting or access to the polls, it did not stop for any federal election. You can still go there, vote for who you want to vote for that. The 4 a.m. thing is about a Georgia statute that says if you have any issue, which we do every election day, and the poll has to close, you have to give people that equal opportunity of time that same day, no matter how much time it is. All right, if you close for 7 hours, you got to give folks 7 more hours to vote. All right, very simple statute. Now, the mayor utilized his power granted to him by council in order to stop the city election because they had no election supervisor in order to certify the election. Once a judge that same day, because the other side made a motion, a judge same day appointed 2 individuals. Now you have someone who is appointed in order to do so. What happened then? Well, the polls opened back up. That's what happened. Now, the mayor and both of those resigned officials have been arrested. They are out now. Mayor Owens blamed the local upheaval on racial politics, saying that Pollard, who is Black, was targeted by white residents trying to wrest power from the Black majority. The city of Camilla is nearly 3/4 Black. The Georgia NAACP said in a statement on Facebook that it was, quote, deeply alarmed by the allegations of election interference, as well as the arrest of Owens and the 2 former election officials, all whom are Black. We are or were shocked that there were written indictments, said Gerald Griggs. Gerald Griggs, a good friend of mine, president of the Georgia NAACP and a noted attorney. Quote, we are still in a fact-finding mode to see what actually happened. When this went down, I did an op-ed in Rolling Out that same day. I spoke to attorney and Georgia NAACP president Gerald Griggs because we remember from the story you just saw of me 6-7 years ago of how bad things were in Camilla then. Well, see, that's external. That's external. You know, cemetery is external, but it goes to a deeply held bias, a deeply held racism that exists inside of the hearts and minds of individuals who are there. It is about power, control. So now that the politics have transformed, the judiciary has decided to become the de facto leaders in this political melee. All right, Jackson, thoughts here?
Yeah, well, I mean, how much effort and intentionality has to go behind a city or a town that has 70% Black population and they ain't running nothing? You know, like, well, they just don't want to be a part of nothing? Of course not. This is systemic. But the thing that really stood out to me, just seeing that, you know, those clips, you've been in the field forever, but also just these, like what they really wanted to say to you, and you know what they wanted to say to you when you was asking them, you know what they wanted to say to you, but all of them were like, oh, nothing to see here. I don't know about it. You're gonna have to go ask, talk to the people. All of them looked very annoyed because they know it's intention. You know, they're holding on to the power that they have. But it to me, it's just really as straightforward as that. It was pretty jarring to see all of them just flat out act like you crazy or you tripping, that this town is 70% Black, but they got 2 police officers. You like, you got more than one? Yeah, we do. We got 2. Right, you know what I'm saying? Like, we got a whole 2 up in here. So yeah, no, this is definitely glad that we covering this, but I wouldn't want to live in that town, that's for sure.
Yeah, and ironically, when we fact checked them on the 2, they did not have 2 cops at that time. They had 2 recruits, and those recruits happened after I first reported on it before going to the city. And I did not meet, shake hands with one Black person at City Hall because they did not exist there.
Oh, they Confederates.
It was wild, man. So we'll stay on top of this, obviously, bring you updates as they come. We got more on the other side. Indisputable, stick and stay. Indisputable is still the fastest growing news show in America compared to CNN, Fox News, and 30 other networks. We tell the truth on Indisputable because the truth is indisputable. We go places that other news media outlets refuse to go. When there were human rights abuses happening at the Victorville prison, guards and members of the community contacted us.
You, through your investigative reporting, unearthed very troubling allegations about specific forms of abuse and discrimination in the federal prison system.
It really doesn't take much to be a trusted voice. All it takes is to be fearless, report on matters, be an advocate. I called it the bullpen intentionally because it's a place of preparation. We present individuals who may have an opposing view, so we debate. Sometimes we interview individuals because their stories deserve to be heard. A survivor of significant police misconduct and his attorney. We covered this story earlier, and to remind you of the horror of one man being shot at damn near 100 times by the police. We take time on this show to showcase the temper tantrums of Karens in the wild. We do this not because we want to see people's emotional outbursts in public, but because these incidents are emblematic of a bigger societal issue taking place across the nation, and it has to be checked. My friend, my big homie, attorney at law, Benjamin Crump.
I just want to thank you, man. Educated, articulate brothers like yourself speak truth to power. It makes a great difference in changing the landscape in America. So
listen, no matter what you do, don't allow the politics of ideology to evaporate the soul that still exists inside of you. They don't stop, I don't stop. Racism won't stop, I won't stop. Systemic bias won't stop, I won't stop. People still need health care, so I won't stop. People still need criminal justice systems reform, so I won't stop. You won't stop either. All right, welcome back. Always good to be with you. Let me read some of these beautiful comments. Colin Hutton, thank you for that. I firmly believe Linda McMahon thinks her role in Trump's administration is a wrestling gimmick. This is real life. I agree with you, man. The things I could say about her appointment, her husband, and Trump would take longer than we have in the program. The political Gemini says, remember when we all compared Betsy DeVos to Professor Umbridge from Harry Potter? Yeah, no, Linda McMahon is so much worse. You're right. You're right. And the voodoo you do, she gets paid and paid well to work with that clown. Yeah, talking about CNN and Abby Phillip. I pray for Abby. That has to be tough. All right, so Republicrat. We need people in politics who thinks the way Dr. Richard does. Okay, I appreciate that. I don't know if everybody should. V. Brown, that's top tier journalism right there. I didn't know how else to do what I do, and I'm still doing it today. All right, we got an update. 2 have been arrested over discovered arsenal and Nazi paraphernalia. Put it up, full mask. Here we go. The proud racist are here. Yesterday, we covered the arsenal of military weaponry and armor, including a machine gun and grenade launchers.
along with, shockingly, Nazi paraphernalia found during a raid of a home in Washington state. So this is your update. The two arrested in retaliation to the raid were ex-military, according to prosecutors. Levi Austin Frakes and Charles Ethan Fields were arrested Monday night after their home in Lacey near Olympia, according to the criminal complaint. So two men arrested in Washington state with an arsenal that included dozens of guns, explosives, and also body armor. Along with the Nazi paraphernalia were former military members who attacked a soldier with a hammer while stealing gear from Joint Base Lewis McChord. That was last weekend, investigators say. Levi and Charles were arrested Monday night at their home in Lacey, near Olympia. That's according to the criminal complaint filed Wednesday in the U.S. District Court. Federal court records did not list an attorney for either man. One of the defendants told investigators the pair had been stealing equipment from the base for the past 2 years to sell or trade, and agents found about $24,000 in cash at the home, wrote Special Agent Christopher J. Ragus of the Army Criminal Investigation Division. Washington State business license records show that Frakes and Fields have a company called Sovereign Solutions, which featured an SS logo with the letters separated by a lightning bolt. Its website advertises, quote, quality training and equipment for the modern war fighter, end quote, including marksmanship classes, as well as a t-shirt with the company logo and words, quote, professional war crime committer, end quote. According to the complaint, a soldier entered a building at the Army Ranger compound at Joint Base Lewis McChord on Sunday night and found two men partially masked with a cluster of U.S. Army property around them. The soldier questioned them about what they were doing and told them to pull down their mask, which they did. A fight ensued, and one of the men brandished a hammer and struck the soldier in the head. The soldier continued to fight despite losing a large amount of blood and managed to get control of the hammer, at which point one of the men pulled a knife. The soldier then let him go, the complaint said. They had attempted to steal about $14,000 worth of body armor, ballistic helmets, and communications equipment Sunday, most of which they left behind when they dropped their rucksacks and they fled, the complaint states. The federal complaint charges them with robbery, assault, and theft of government property. They also face investigation on state charges of unlawful possession of incendiary devices, your explosives, short-barreled rifles, and a machine gun. Each was being held in the Thurston County Jail, $500,000 bail. Agents found rifles staged at the upstairs windows. A probable cause affidavit filed in Thurston County Superior Court said the federal complaint said agents, quote, observed numerous Nazi white supremacy memorabilia and also murals, the literature in which in every bedroom, and several stockpiles of weapons, also military equipment. Now, based on a lot of Republicans' understanding of the Constitution, unfortunately, you can't use the fact that these individuals have a stockpile of weapons as your probable cause to go see what the F is going on. You have to find other things. See, but if you could utilize that as your prerequisite, then you probably don't get to this problem. Some would say, well, it's not a problem, they got caught. No, they got caught this time. You see, the other stuff they've been stealing for this amount of time is out there in the hands of individuals who may do harm to another individual. So the damage is done. This just stopped the damage from continuing. All right, Jackson, thoughts here.
Now, outside of war-torn countries, America is like one of the only places that you see this type of stuff happen with any type of regularity. The gun violence, obviously our access to it, but these guys were completely out of their minds. And as we discuss all the time on this program, the culture is really a lot of what not just what leads to this, but what makes people feel comfortable to do this at all. Feeling like they're standing up for their patriotism. Thousands of people stormed the Capitol January 6, 2020 over Donald Trump, over a game show host. That's the environment that we live in. So this is definitely going to continue to ramp up. And I'm really curious and nervous to see what goes down, in a sense of like, as Trump, keeps all these trade wars going and his policies that are inevitably going to make things more expensive for people. I think that we're very likely to see a lot of riots, or at least a handful of riots. And, white people gonna be out in the streets revolting because if they can't afford nothing. But it's just really a mess. It's just such a mess that we're in right now. And stories like this really just show what type of people are here.
Yeah. Well said. All right. Brother, always fascinating to have you on the program. Tell people how they can follow you, check out your great work.
Oh, yeah, always good to be here. Y'all can check me out at Politics and Paper on YouTube. I'm going to have a more sophisticated setup next time. You know what I'm saying? I just got out here to Chicago, so it's all good. I got the birthday balloons and the dishes behind me. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, y'all can check me out at Politics and Paper on YouTube. Appreciate all the support.
We appreciate you, dear brother. All right. Remember, take care of yourself. Take care of each other. Take care of the planet. Remember, the truth is always indisputable.